Hey, here we are. Good afternoon and welcome everyone to the Upper Room. I am currently streaming in from a place in the country near Castlemaine. We've got Upper Room. There's a bit of reverb. We've got Josh as well, and we've got Fraser. So, hope you guys have all been doing well. If you want to try commenting, we should be able to, with this new StreamYard technology, be able to put live comments along the bottom. So feel free to engage in discussion, and we can, I guess, we can share that with you guys as well. Start off with Josh. How's your week been?
My week's been super busy, super creative. So obviously we are streaming on YouTube and Facebook, which is different to what we have done. So I've spent a lot of time this week getting my creative on and figuring out how a lot of this works. And that actually got me really excited and made the week go really fast.
Fantastic. And is this your first major stream on this platform, or have you?
No, this is my first stream on this platform.
Okay.
So this required us to go, all right, we want to go to YouTube as well. Let us set up a YouTube account, which then needs 24 hours to enable everything so you can do a live stream. But I didn't realize that. So I was really grateful that we started doing that on Wednesday so that we had a YouTube channel ready for today.
So you can't stream from Zoom directly to YouTube?
You can, but one of the reasons we've done kind of this software is the hopefully the viewer experience, the user interface from those who are watching is far better than just the Zoom call. And the fact that we can then stream from this platform to both Facebook and YouTube, and then filter all of the comments from both Facebook and YouTube into one area rather than keeping track of both, might make things a bit easier. So if people are watching and they would like to help us out, please comment on Facebook, please comment on YouTube, and hopefully I will have those pop up beside me and we can test to see if they work.
Fantastic. Okay. So we'll just wait. Can we get some elevator music as well, or is that
we'll make that do 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 do. I think that's our deputy theme song, actually.
Yeah. So Fraser, would you like to introduce yourself? Share where you're coming from, what you do normally, and how you've been enjoying this lockdown period.
Sure. My name is Fraser Catton. I am coming to you from my study, which used to be our girls' bedroom, hence the periodic table in the background. I'm in Mooroolbark, Croydon area. I'm pastor at the Oasis Church in Croydon.
Nice.
As far as what I've been doing in lockdown, look, I've been talking to people, and people either seem to be super busy or super not busy. Lockdown has either made them, for those that happen to lose jobs and all of a sudden had a lot of free time on their hands, they've been taking up knitting or macrame or some new activity. I haven't had the privilege of doing that yet.
Did you say macrame?
I did. I said macrame. It's a thing.
I prefer macrame.
Macrame? Oh,
yeah.
No.
Just going to have a bit of a Joe Rogan moment and just Google what macrame actually is. So.
We've also got. Let's see. We've got some comments. So, firstly, this one from YouTube. It works.
Yes.
And this one especially for you, Daniel.
Oh, here we go. Yeah. Thanks, Brian. Thank you.
Nice. Although all our beards look basically negligent in comparison to Josh's.
You're welcome.
Yes. So, Fraser, how many hours of days of growth is yours?
I got to think. I shaved last night. So, not too
nice.
bad.
And Josh, yours is what? Is that 6 months worth? Is that?
This is a tough question for me always. I've not been clean shaven in about 7 years.
I thought you shaved.
So the last time that I was clean shaven was, I think, November 2012. So
that's ironic that you were clean shaven for a charity event, which is all about growing a beard.
No, the whole idea is start the month clean shaven.
Okay. So, and then after that, you thought, look, I'll just save it till next November, and then you
Yeah.
thought, hey, I can play Santa Claus, and then it's just evolved from there.
I've actually, I had massive volume up here once, and I thought, maybe when I get it old and grey, I could do that. So
perhaps, Josh, you could actually dye it grey for Christmas.
Perhaps.
I don't know if Emma would approve on that being a permanent change, but
Emma would not approve of it being a change, period. So we wouldn't really want to encourage that too much. So we've got Eric and Molly have said that they're watching. So likewise, if you're watching and we want to know where you're watching from, let us know. We want to involve you in church as much as possible. So get those comments happening. This is a discussion option for everyone. So whether you're a part of our discussion online, like physically, the three of us, or you're just watching, pop it along. Dan, you're not the only one. Evangeline is saying she'd love to see me clean shaven.
Yeah.
It might have to be a fundraiser. Let me just say that. Might be the only way around.
World's Greatest Shave is in, what, March each year, isn't it? You could do, I mean, I don't know if it counts. I don't know if you can do a World's Greatest Shave for a beard as opposed to for your head of hair.
Well, you can. I suppose you can make the rules for whatever you like. So, let me go back to that first. Sorry, guys. Stuffed us around for a bit, getting myself set up.
All good. Okay, well, look, maybe what I might do is share any announcements. Do we have any announcements to make about things?
I think the only announcement is this one.
Tithes and offerings. Perfect. So, guys, feel free to whip out your phone in church because this is allowed in the new era. Feel free to tap the e-giving app and make a contribution at some point throughout the service or after the service. Church is still going. We've still got expenses going. Hopefully you've remembered your PIN. I don't know what mine is, but I think Touch ID still works, so that's good for me. If not, it would be a good excuse if I had forgotten that PIN. But yeah, e-giving has been revamped actually. I'm not sure if you guys have played with the app much, but it looks much better than the old system.
The app is so much better than the website, in my opinion.
And it also tells you where your home church is. So I'm 125 kilometers from my home church. So maybe I should be giving to Castlemaine, actually, Josh. How would you feel about that?
It's a local offering this week, so I would like for you to contribute it to your local congregation. Thanks, Dan.
Okay. Well, here we go. And Melissa says, I don't know if you can put her comment up, that e-giving is a great way to collect credit card points as well. So I guess it's a win-win.
That's true. If you're paying by credit card, you can get your Qantas frequent flyer at the same time. Probably not Velocity.
Yeah, maybe don't go Velocity at the moment.
So yeah, local offering this week is what we've got. And obviously, as you said, Dan, there's still expenses. We're not spending nearly as much on gas and electricity and water and whatnot. But those expenses are still there. But local offering doesn't just go towards those things. It actually helps us run the ministry events. And Fraser, you're heavily involved at your local church in some of the ministries that we would love to see churches heavily involved in. So you guys do a lot of stuff with food parcels and outreach type stuff with Vive Cafe there in Croydon. So if we were at Croydon at the Oasis, the local offering could support those sorts of things. Whereas at Mazdak, it will support things like Pathfinders and youth ministry and teen ministry and the worship experiences. Running things online, whilst convenient, isn't actually free. So there's some costs that are associated with those. So that's some of the things that the local offering can go towards. Paying for youth pastoral workers and for mission opportunities for the local church. So if we want to run a mission trip like we did last year, the local budget will help pay for those activities.
Perfect. Well, look, maybe I'll take some time now to say a prayer over the offering, which people are giving digitally, and then I can pass things over to Fraser.
Awesome.
Cool. Let's bow our heads. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for another beautiful Sabbath. We thank you for a chance to rest, especially in this change of pace with this lockdown period. Lord, we just ask a special blessing and comfort for all those who've been affected, whether directly from having the virus or knowing people with the virus, or people who've been affected with their livelihoods through the huge upheavals that we've experienced. Lord, I just pray that you might anoint Fraser's lips as he shares this message. And Lord, may we all have something tailored, personal takeaway from what he has to share. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. All right. We have I suppose the benefit of trying to have some kind of corporate worship. It's not always easy to do when we're apart. And so we've been lucky, as we were last week, with a small group that, whilst following all of the social distancing measures that we need to, have abided by the law and recorded a couple of songs for us. So we're going to have songs being The Stand, followed by The Blessing. And we'll just share those with you now. Feel free to sing along in your homes, wherever you are. If you're out on a walk, you've got those earphones in, feel free to sing along as well. And we're going to watch this together. We'll turn our microphones off. You'll notice that Fraser has dropped out. That's because his internet is about as good as mine is. But we'll keep going and he'll rejoin us when he can. And in the meantime, let's just enjoy some music together as a church community.
Mystery before creation.
So I'm just popping back in to apologize. Apparently I forgot a key component of sharing the audio with such things. So let me make sure that I've got that button selected, and we will hopefully make this work. Hold up. Let me press some buttons. We'll try this again. If it doesn't work, my apologies. We might just have to skip ahead. We'll come back to that if I can get that sorted. So apologies there. Bring these guys back in for a moment. So we'll get it all sorted and start again. We might end with some music this week rather than start with some music. So my apologies. The joy of using new software, hey? All good. Ishan seems to know what's happening. It goes I click the mute button. There we go. We'll figure that out in a moment. Welcome back, Fraser.
Thanks. I dropped out. I'm back in. I dropped back in.
Love it. So we're going to probably then just jump into a bit of a discussion. So Fraser, introduce your topic for us.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I wanted to explore with you guys 2 Kings chapter 5. It's a story you've probably read before, but it's one that's always captivated me because there's just so much depth to it. Every time I read it, there's something new that kind of pops out and you go, oh, I didn't see that before. So I wanted to go through it with you because there's so many different angles you can take. There's so many different perspectives you can look at and so many things that you can pull out that, hopefully speak to you and where you're at today.
Cool. So 2 Kings chapter 5, you've titled it something very specific. What's that title?
So I've called it Lessons from a Leper. And it probably could be called Lessons from Many Different People. Naaman's the main guy in this story, and so we've taken him. We'll learn some stuff from him, but hopefully you'll be able to pick out some things from the other characters in this story as well.
Yeah. Okay, so do we want to just maybe then read through the chapter together, and then we'll have a bit of a discussion around what that looks like?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so hopefully we've got the ability to see that as well. So I'll just hide us, and we should still be heard. Go for gold, Fraser.
Cool. Here we go, 2 Kings 5. Now Naaman was commander of the army of the king of Aram. He was a great man in the sight of his master and highly regarded, because through him the Lord had given victory to Aram. He was a valiant soldier, but he had leprosy. Now bands of raiders from Aram had gone out and had taken captive a young girl from Israel, and she served Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, "If only my master would see the prophet who's in Samaria, he would cure him of his leprosy." So Naaman went to his master and told him what the girl from Israel had said. "By all means go," the king of Aram replied. "I will send a letter to the king of Israel." So Naaman left, taking with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 sets of clothing. The letter that he took to the king of Israel read, "With this letter, I'm sending my servant Naaman to you so that you may cure him of his leprosy." Verse 7. As soon as the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his robes and said, "Am I God? Can I kill and bring back to life? Why does this fellow send someone to me to be cured of his leprosy? See how he is trying to pick a quarrel with me?" When Elisha, the man of God, heard that the kings of Israel had torn his robes, he sent him this message: "Why have you torn your robes? Have the man come to me, and he'll know there's a prophet in Israel." Josh, do you want to do some?
Yeah. So Naaman went with his horses and chariots and stopped at the door of Elisha's house. Elisha sent a messenger to say to him, "Go wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan, and your flesh will be restored, and you will be cleansed." But Naaman went away angry and said, "I thought that he would surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, wave his hand over the spot, and cure me of my leprosy. Are not Abana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than the waters of Israel? Couldn't I wash in them and be cleansed?" So he turned and went off in a rage. Naaman's servant said to him, and went to him and said, "My father, if the prophet had told you to do some great thing, would you have not done it? How much more then when he tells you, wash and be cleansed?" So he went down and dipped himself in the Jordan 7 times, as the man of God had told him, and his flesh was restored, and he became clean like that of a young boy. Then Naaman and all his attendants went back to the man of God, stood before him, and said, now I know that there is no God in the world except in Israel. So please accept a gift from your servant. The prophet answered, as surely as the Lord lives, whom I serve, I will not accept a thing. And even though Naaman urged him, he refused. If you will not, said Naaman, please let me, your servant, be given as much earth as a pair of mules can carry. For your servant will never again make a burnt offering and sacrifices to any god but the Lord. But may the Lord forgive your servant for this one thing. When my master enters the temple of Rimmon to bow down, and he is leaning on my arm, and I have to bow there also, when I bow down in the temple of Rimmon, may the Lord forgive your servant for this. Fraser, do you want to pick that up?
Yeah. After Naaman, go in peace, Elisha said. After Naaman had traveled some distance, Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, the man of God, said to himself, my master was too easy on Naaman, this Aramean, by not accepting from him what he brought. As surely as the Lord lives, I'll run after him and get something from him. So Gehazi hurried after Naaman. When Naaman saw him running toward him, he got down from his chariot to meet him. Is everything all right? He asked. Josh. Thanks.
Everything is all right, Gehazi answered. Sorry. My master sent me to say, 2 young men from the company of the prophets have just come from the hill country of Ephraim. Please give them a talent of silver and 2 sets of clothing. By all means, take 2 talents, said Naaman. He urged Gehazi to accept them, and tied up the 2 talents of silver to the bags with 2 sets of clothing. He gave them to 2 of his servants, and they carried them ahead to Gehazi. When Gehazi came to the hill, he took the things from the servants and put them away in the house. He sent the men away, and they left. When he went in and stood before his master, Elisha asked him, where have you been, Gehazi? Your servant didn't go anywhere, Gehazi answered. Praise.
But Elisha said to him, was not my spirit with you when the man got down from his chariot to meet you? Is this the time to take money or to accept clothes or olive groves and vineyards or flocks and herds or male and female slaves? Naaman's leprosy will cling to you and your descendants forever. Then Gehazi went from Elisha's presence, and his skin was leprous. It had become as white as snow. All right. There's just so much going on in this story. Maybe we'll kick off by looking at some of the bigger context. Aram, Israel, kind of at odds with each other. And so at this point in time, I think it's Ben-Hadad III was king of Aram, and the king of Israel was King Joram, and there were these skirmishes taking place along the border. And so you've kind of got this tension already in the background between these 2 nations. There's stuff going on. And the commander of Aram is Naaman. And you would have picked up early on in chapter 5, it said that he was a great man in the sight of his master and highly regarded, because through him the Lord had given victory to Aram. That's kind of interesting. You've got this guy who's from Israel's perspective, he doesn't know about Israel's God. He doesn't follow Israel's God.
He's almost the enemy.
Yeah. But God is working through him, even though he may not be aware of it.
Yeah. Well, this time period is also not too far away, I suppose, of the exile into Babylon, in the scheme of things at least. And we know that God used Nebuchadnezzar to put the exiles, to put the Israelites into exile. And so I think there's a great lesson to be learnt around God using the non-Christians to, I suppose, achieve his purpose.
Yeah, God is bigger than just we think what if God can work through non-Christians, if God can work through people who may not even believe in Him, that says a lot about who He is. He's gracious, He's compassionate, He's kind, to allow everyone to be used for His purposes.
Yeah.
For me, that's a pretty cool thought. But then you move on a little bit further in the story, and end of verse 1, it pulls out this. The main problem is he was a valiant soldier, but he had leprosy. And Josh, you would have read about leprosy. It's
well, here's the thing. So this leprosy. What's that, Dan?
It's a bit of a setback having leprosy.
It is. But the topic of leprosy here is not necessarily leprosy as we know it, but it was a general term for skin diseases. Not only have I read about leprosy, but in 2010, I went to India and visited a leper colony. So I actually know what leprosy looks like. And up until that point, you read this story and it's just a story about someone with leprosy. And it's just, this ancient story. But leprosy still exists today as we know it as leprosy. It hasn't gone away. And this story for me became more real after being able to actually see what leprosy looks like and how it affects everything in relation to how people live. Because in India, with leprosy, they do have that kind of biblical mindset almost of unclean. And so the lepers are put well away for fear of contamination and passing it on to other people. So they have these leper villages and leper colonies that people live in without any, I suppose, ability to go to the outside world, although the outside world is allowed in.
Sounds kind of relevant.
Yeah.
Well, anyway.
I'm surprised, Josh, that you're allowed to go in, so there's no risk of contagion by tourists going to or visitors going to the colony.
Well, the whole notion, I think, is you're not like there's obviously some sanitization stuff that goes on. I haven't looked fully into leprosy as it is. I don't understand exactly how it is kind of transferred, if it's transferred or what that looks like. I'd need to understand that a bit more. But we were in hospitals where there were stories of, this couple that got married and a week later he was diagnosed with leprosy, but he can't divorce his wife. So for the next 25 years, they've been married but have only spent a week together.
What?
That's tragic. So, and it really is. It's back then it was a death sentence. For some now it still is. But if you got leprosy, there was no cure. And for the early stages of leprosy, it's kind of just like a bit of a skin rash. So you can still function, you can still do things. It's not until it starts eating away at your nerves and your fingernails drop out, your hair drops out, your
nose falls off type of thing. Like it's a gnarly disease.
Yeah, and a lot of the injury that comes, or the maiming that comes from leprosy, is a result of having your nerves eaten away, so you can't actually feel something. So you can have your hand on the stove, and you see the smoke. Hey, what's burning? Oh, it's my fingers.
Okay.
So you can't tell when you're in danger because you don't have that pain sensation.
Wow. So that's one of the many symptoms of leprosy. Like it actually takes away your sense of touch as well.
Yeah. So your foot could be dragging on the ground, but you wouldn't even know. So you end up with this. Yeah.
Can I just say though, when I was in India and we were in these, because we went to 2 separate leper colonies, there was in one of them there was a guy and a girl who were like they dedicated 60 years of their life as missionaries to work in this leper colony. I mean, like this is just in 2010 that I was there. And in other colonies, there was a Christian church, because the caste system is huge in India. There was a Christian church who would set up like a mobile hospital, so to speak, to care for the leper colonies. And they would go in and, wash their wounds and disinfect anything that was going on, just make sure they were cared for. And the joy on these people's faces because someone dared touch their unclean skin and actually care for them was just next level.
Yeah. And I think that ties into where this young Israelite maid was at. Foreign country, a slave, just probably lost all her dignity, all her value, all her family, all her connections. But it sounds, from just the little glimpse we have of her in this passage, you get this idea that she's got that same sense of compassion. Because she could have said, yes, he's got leprosy. Take that, evil overlord. But instead, she goes, hey, if he goes and sees Elisha, this guy can be healed of this.
Yeah.
And remember, to have someone suggest that you can be healed from something that no one knows of any cure, you've gone from, I have no hope, to, hey, hang on. There's a possibility that the door's slightly open. There's a bit of light. There might be a chance here.
Yeah.
So you can understand.
I suppose there's a gateway there to, I suppose, the Christian narrative of feeling like you're living in this hopeless world. And we as Christians know that we have the option for healing and restoration through the blood of Jesus. How often, perhaps, are we comfortable or confident in sharing that with other people? And what joy or hope could that bring to their life?
Yeah, that's so cool. And that's, when you think of what this little maid did, she said one sentence.
Yeah.
That is all she did. But that was enough to put a stone in Naaman's shoe. And he goes, in my head, I imagine him walking around ordering his army and his minions and doing all that stuff, but still in the back of his head always thinking, I wonder if maybe it's possible. And so you never know the power of just that one little sentence, that one little thing you say that can, as I said, put a stone in someone's shoe and just get them thinking on a different trajectory that they otherwise probably wouldn't have.
I really like what you say there, Fraser, because when you're looking at the slave girl says to Naaman about this guy who could cure it, and you've got this possible vision of Naaman dealing with for some time, because the verse 4 says Naaman went to his master and told him what the girl from Israel said. And the master says, by all means, go and be healed of this horrible disease. But it doesn't say, as we often would see in the Bible, immediately he went to his master. It just says he went to his master. So it could have been that day. It could have been the next week. It could have been the next month. And it just goes to show that, you only perhaps need to plant a seed in someone's mind that there is hope, and leave that with them for some time for that to actually settle.
Yeah. And look, if anyone's tuned into this and you're wondering, what are these guys talking about? Hold on, because when we get to the end, I hope that we can wrap this up and explain things in a way which might make sense for you. What is this hope all about? What are they getting at with this? Because there's a really cool landing to this story.
Yeah. But again, as we go through the rest of the story, if you've got thoughts on, the story and, the I suppose as we break the story down, if you've got thoughts on where that's going or what point really draws out for you, pop that in the comments and we might even bring that into our discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. So Naaman goes to his king, his master, and his master says, by all means go, which, I don't know, Josh, Dan, to me that suggests this guy valued Naaman. He's about to send him to enemy territory on the hunch of a slave girl that this guy might be cured somehow. That's a big stretch.
Yeah, especially when, well, I suppose there's hope if this guy has such respect for Naaman to start with. We get that in verse 1. He was a great man in the sight of his master and highly regarded. his master doesn't want to lose his influence or the influence of Naaman because, he does have that respect for him. So I think there's a lot to be said with the relationships that we have with people, ensuring that we have such good relationships that we are valued, that when we perhaps, need to take an extra day or two off work, for argument's sake, your boss goes, you know what, you're an upstanding citizen, you are honest, you have integrity, I know that you work hard, take that extra day because I know that you're going to come back and be just as upstanding, full of just as much integrity as you were before you left.
Cameo from my daughter and our cat.
There's your cat.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. The oh, sorry. Hi everyone. This is just a little interruption. Hey, I did some number crunching on the gift that had sense to join King of Israel, and today's value, the gift he sent was about $6.5 million worth.
So this is the gift that
So this is verse 5.
Aaron sends to the King of Israel on Naaman's behalf.
Yes.
$6.5 million. Can I just say, if anyone's watching along and you'd like that gift, just give me a thumbs up.
That is huge.
Yeah.
That says how much he wanted Naaman to be healed, restored, saved from.
Yeah.
And then he sends a letter as well. And remember, these two nations have been fighting. It's not like they're friends and part of NATO. This is war with each other. So it's a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
And sorry, Dan.
No, I just said definitely. I'm just affirming you. It's you like just to go to that length of giving $6.5 million, and trusting, I guess, almost enemies just on the word of a maid girl is exceptional.
See, Vic wants that $6.5 million.
I think that's saying he wants to give you the $6.5 million.
Either way, I'll take it.
That's good.
I'll split that $6.5 million with you two.
Yeah. Hey, looking at verse 7, the reaction of the Israelite king is interesting. He reads this letter, and instead of going, "Oh yeah, I know a guy," he goes, "What?"
Yeah.
He starts tearing his robes, and he thinks, I don't know. Do you get the sense that he thinks there's some kind of quid pro quo expected? I'm going to be indebted to this guy, or he's trying to find some back channel in to destroy us or take us over. He's freaking out.
And here's the thing, he could have, as the king of Israel, he did know of God's prophets. He would have known of Elisha and been able to say, look, this is not for me. This is coming to me to pass on to God's spokesperson through Elisha. But he just kind of freaked out. But it also goes to show how, I suppose, testy at times the relationship between God's prophets and the kings of Israel was.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Funny how Elisha gets wind of this, though.
Yeah.
He hears what's going on. And he has a pretty down-to-earth response. Kind of like while the fuss.
Yeah.
So is that because he's used to receiving great gifts from other foreign powers on a regular basis? He's very confident about it, isn't he?
It raises a really good question, because it kind of asks you. You wonder, he's got a different relationship with God than the king does.
Yeah.
The king has a problem come up, and he starts freaking out. Elisha has a problem come up, and he goes, "Why are you worried?" let me have a look at this. It's as though one of them knows what God is capable of, and the other's forgotten what God's capable of.
Yeah.
So he, anyhow, he goes down. He doesn't even go out to Naaman. I mean, talk about being stood up. Naaman arrives at the door. Elisha doesn't even go out. He sends a messenger and says, "Go dip in the river 7 times." Yeah. How would you feel? What would your initial response be?
It's almost like, you're not sick, have a bath. That's almost what it sounds like. Like, just if you wash your skin, you're going to be fine.
But do it 7 times because we want to get some video. It's going to be funny.
That's it. But I suppose the challenge is, Naaman's reaction to that is, are not the Abana and the Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than the waters of Israel? It's like the Jordan River doesn't have a good reputation. Let's go to a clean kind of spring of water, and maybe I'll wash there.
Yeah. There's a sense that this guy's used to authority. He's used to being in control. And I guess he's used to being the one making the orders, making the commands. He's told what to do, and it's something that seems pretty simple, pretty mundane. And he's pretty angry.
Yeah.
But I guess when you think about what he's asked to do, it is actually really simple. Go jump in this river 7 times. That's the Jordan, Josh.
So this is the Jordan River. Obviously not at the time of Naaman, because there's like a digger in it. But this is a legitimate picture of the Jordan River. It's got mud on the side. It's not like that, kind of beachy feel. It is kind of well protected with the trees and things. But did you guys ever have that visual of Naaman washing the river and then just almost like the flipping of the hair up and the Son of God shining down upon him, and he comes up clean? Was that your visual? I think,
slow, the water dripping off his face.
Yeah. For me, it was more like Naaman was in a lake, because it seemed to be so wide. But the Jordan River, at least at this point, is it's a small river. It is a bit dirty. You can, if there's a digger in the river, it's probably taken some dirt and grime from the side down into the river with it. You can see the mud on the side there. It's not a clean space. So this is the thing. Now, there is one interesting thing to note with this. I'm just going to blow this picture up for everyone. As you look, actually, it doesn't blow it up at all, does it? It just pushes it to the side. I'll bring us back.
Press the plus button and zoom in.
No, not without fiddling around. I'll probably break everything. Still, you're learning how to work this. On the side, there is a tree. And when I saw this picture, I'm like, is that a gum tree? Turns out that's an Australian eucalyptus tree that was imported to Israel in like the 1870s because it would help firm up the banks of the river, because the banks of the river were collapsing. So Naaman got baptized in a river that now has some Australiana next to it.
Good trivia.
I thought Australia had, is contaminated with all the pine trees that we have imported here, but we've actually done equally well for our gum trees to the rest of the world.
Good job, us. If you look really closely, there's a koala. And no, just kidding. Yeah. Okay.
The water would have been quite dirty there, because like when I imagine washing in a river, I'm imagining like a glacier-fed, beautiful, pristine body of water. But Israel, it's a dry, deserty area. There's mud. It's not the image of what we see of a beautiful little.
Yeah, but it's still a simple thing to do. Almost too simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, how about you get me to, I don't know, dance around a fire and sing a song, or, bury myself in dirt and say some form of incantation or something. Like, let's, and this is the thing, that's quite possibly Naaman's thought, because he does come from a pagan nation. He comes from a nation where the things of God are not the way of things. So it is perhaps a little too simple, but also just comical, silly.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's keep reading through the story. Naaman's servant seems to have a little bit more wisdom than Naaman does at that point.
Yep.
He's Naaman's in a rage, and his servant says, hang on. If he told you to do something amazing and great, wouldn't you have done it? If this is really simple, why don't you just do it? Why don't you just have a crack? And fortunately, Naaman listens for his sake anyhow. Fortunately, he listened and convinced his boss to actually go down and dip in the water. And once again, there's a cool little thing that comes out of this in terms of sometimes we can't think through things very clearly in the moment, but it's those people around us who we have speaking into our lives who can give us some of the perspective, some of the understanding that we need to just, hey, reflect on that and go, yeah, actually that's good advice.
Yeah. Having those mentors or those people that can really speak into your situation.
Yeah, absolutely. So he listens, he goes down, he bobs down 6 times, and I often wonder what was going through his head that last time he went under.
Yeah. Let's do this, and then everyone's just I'm kind of going to come up out of the water, and everyone's just going to be pointing and laughing.
Yeah. And there's going to be nothing happening. Was he thinking, hey, there's a possibility that things are about to change? My life is about to be completely different now? Or was he just thinking, all right, well, let's get this last one done. My soldiers can have a gig, and then we'll go back home.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've ever been called to do something that seemed strange, simple, perhaps a little bit crazy. But if God's the one calling you to do it, there's a reason for it.
That's it. But you've got to have confidence in God to do it.
Yeah.
So do you think that Naaman had confidence in God?
That's a really good question, Josh. And we don't have a lot of text to help us answer that too well. What we do have is his actions, though.
Yeah.
And he was given something to do by God. He went and did it, suggesting that he did trust that something could come of this.
Yeah.
Well, he did, but then if you say verse 11, Naaman's angry, and it takes his servants to convince him, hey, look, we've come all this way. If the prophet's told you to do this thing, you should probably give it a crack. And then he acquiesces and says, okay. And he goes down and dips himself in the Jordan. It seems like there's that inner conflict. There's that wrestling which he has between deciding whether to go through with this strange, somewhat insignificant act, or to give up and turn around and go home.
Yeah. So it's a challenge to go, well, does he believe in God's providence and ability to deliver him? Or as Vic's saying here, is he just desperate and he's got no other choice?
Yeah.
And really, does it matter? Now, I'm not saying that I'm not kind of giving everyone to say, all right, forget your belief in God and just be desperate all the time. because I think once you know, you know. But perhaps for some, desperation is a starting point.
Yeah, if you think, man, I don't know what tomorrow brings, I don't know what my future holds, I don't know if it's going to be good or bad, and when I look at this idea of leprosy, there's this stuff that I can't seem to get rid of. There seems to be no cure for it.
Yeah.
When you're at that point, you're willing to accept whatever options may be available.
Yeah.
And I don't think it matters how you get to the water. I don't think any of that matters. It's more that you get there, that you do what God's called you to do.
Yeah, that's it. So Naaman's now come up out of the water that 7th time. He's done something that was a little bit silly. He's done something that wasn't exactly what he had expected. You know, as you were saying, Dan, in verse 11, it was more, I thought he would surely come out and wave, call in the name of the Lord God and wave his hand on the spot of leprosy and cure me. Like, that's what he was expecting. But he's gone and done this thing out of perhaps desperation, and he's come up out of the water that 7th time.
Yeah.
What's happening?
Yeah, is it a gradual change, or is it like in an instant after the 7th ascension?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like, did he have little bits of the leprosy kind of disappear on the 1st and the 2nd and the 3rd? And if he didn't go that 7th, would he still have had some leprosy, but not all of it?
Yeah, I reckon, I don't know, this is my personal view. I think nothing happened until he came up that 7th time.
Yeah.
That's faith, isn't it? That's trusting in something you can't see.
But I think that's also a great example for the Christian experience, is that just because you're not seeing results on the 1st time, the 2nd time, the 3rd time, doesn't mean you should stop praying or reading the Bible or coming and worshiping together. It's actually consistency that helps develop that trust in God.
Yeah, absolutely. So Naaman comes up, he's healed. What does it say? He's got, his skin was clean like that of a young boy. He's got baby skin.
Yeah.
But I love verse 15. Then Naaman and all his attendants went back to the man of God. He stood before him and said, now I know that there is no God in all the world except in Israel.
But my question was, Nebuchadnezzar said that like 2 or 3 times. Darius said that. Like, kings and rulers of pagan nations have said that, and then nothing's happened. So do we have that experience, or do we have more of the, say, Nicodemus experience, where that is a for life change, but maybe on the sly?
Yeah, good question. We don't hear a lot more about Naaman apart from Luke 4.
Yeah.
I think it's in Luke 4. Jesus says, they're talking about a prophet being honored in his hometown. And Jesus says, well, hey, lots of people back in Elisha's time had leprosy in Israel. None of them got cured.
Yeah.
But Naaman did. So that suggests that maybe his change wasn't just a temporary one, but one that was actually more long-lasting.
Yep.
It doesn't prove it.
So let's assume that it's the more lasting. And take us through to verse 18. And the reason I want to focus on verse 18 is because Naaman makes a very specific request here. And there's a question that's come in saying, what do we make of the request to be able to participate essentially in the pagan worship service, not as a worshipper, but as a supporter, as an attendee? Can we keep those traditions happening to keep up relationships or to save face?
Yeah, good question. Calvin. Let's have a look at verse 18. Well, let's do verse 17 as well, because that I think plays into it as well. So Elisha's just said, hey, I'm not accepting a cent for this. This wasn't my doing. This is all God's doing. And Naaman says, well, if you won't accept, please let me, your servant, be given as much earth, dirt, like soil, as a pair of mules can carry, for your servant will never again make burnt offerings and sacrifices to any other god but the Lord. So there was a few ways to understand this, but I think the clearest one is back in that time there was a belief that you could only worship the God of that nation in that nation.
Yeah.
So Naaman's wanting to take a little bit of Israel dirt back with him so he can worship the God of that nation in his home country.
Yeah.
That kind of makes sense. It's a different way of viewing things, but hey, that's how he rolled, and that was fine. And then verse 18, but may the Lord forgive your servant for this one thing. When my master enters the temple of Rimmon to bow down, and he is leaning on my arm, and I have to bow there also, when I bow down in the temple of Rimmon, may the Lord forgive your servant for this. So what's he actually asking for?
It's a great question. He's not, I suppose, he's asking for it almost sounds like a free pass. It's not saying that he's going to be worshipping the God of Rimmon, but he's going to be present. And so I think it's just, is it okay for me to be present in these places? Is it okay for me? But I think the point of the question more so is it okay for me to look like I'm worshipping the gods there, even though I'm not? Because if my master kneels down or bows down and I kneel down and bow down to support him, it looks like I'm worshipping, but I'm not. Is that okay?
So it seems like he's asking for clarification. Because he does ask, he says, may the Lord forgive your servant for this one thing. So he's, and put yourself in his shoes, he's thinking ahead. Okay, I now have a new God.
Yeah.
I work with this God. He's thinking ahead and going, hang on, the implications of this for my life are going to be dot, dot. And one of those is, well, hang on, I have to go with my boss to his place of worship because my job is to support him.
Yeah.
When he bows down, I have to make sure he doesn't fall over. Makes this guy sound like he's old and fragile. But I have to go and help him. And when I have to do that, can I be forgiven for that?
Yeah.
Interesting question. Is he asking for forgiveness for future sins? Or is he more asking that, hey, this is what I have to do as part of my job. I'm not worshiping this God. I don't follow this God. I'm just doing what I have to do.
What does that, like, I'm just going to go straight in there, Fraser. What does that mean for people who are now working in jobs that require them to work on Sabbath?
Yeah, good question. I'm not sure how this particular instance alone speaks to that.
But I think what the question's really saying, at least in my reading of it, is a recognition, and far too often I think as Christians we don't take this step, a recognition of what that sermon that was convicting to you or that transformational experience at that event, you're actually recognizing what that means for the way in which you live your life. And you're applying that teaching in your mind to the future circumstances. And I don't think that we do that often enough in our own church or Christian experiences. Yeah, that was a nice sermon, but I'm not actually going to change anything. I'm not going to apply anything. Whereas Naaman here is going, I am applying this to the point that I recognize it's going to put me in situations where there will be some questions asked. Is it okay?
But you know what I love about this? Who is going to be watching him?
Probably just his servants who were there watching him being healed.
Exactly. There's only a few people who are going to know the decision that he made, the change that has taken place, but he still wants to remain faithful to that.
That's
He's
it.
through what that's going to look like. So to me, that suggests that this is a genuine change that's gone on in his life, because he's willing to make changes to the way he lives from this point on.
Yeah.
Make sure that this continues.
References you were saying in the book of Luke, it is most likely a for life type change.
Yeah.
Well,
and then
I was going to say, so he's made this change. He's made the request about what happens, and then he starts to head home because no gift has been accepted.
Yeah, but even before that, in verse 19, Elisha's response to this: "Go in peace."
Elisha's almost like the ambassador between the nations. You've come here in peace. Go in peace. Let's be good together. Let's not be at war.
Yeah, and perhaps maybe he's also speaking into the cognitive dissonance, the conflict that's going on in Naaman's head about how this is going to play out back in his hometown, in his home country. And Elisha's response is, you're okay with this.
This is almost like Shrek. There are layers like an onion.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hopefully Naaman leaves with just a sense of peace and contentment about how his new faith is going to play out in his home.
Yeah.
And here
he goes in peace.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool story until this point.
Yeah.
And you kind of wish you could have stopped. What do we know about behavior?
No, we're not. I'm sorry, guys. How good is it when we can have the Bible say what we want it to say rather than what it does say?
Yep. It's a real book. And if I'd written this book and I was trying to promote God, I would have left this bit out. But I think this part of the story adds reliability to the fact that the Bible is a legitimate book rather than some made-up thing.
Yeah.
Because if you're writing this about your people and how good your people are, you would not put this part in the story.
Yeah.
I would be leaving this out. Because you think of what Gehazi has already seen. He's been following Elisha around for a while. He's seen people healed. He's seen miracles happen with food. He's seen people come back to life. Water that was poisonous made well.
Yeah.
He's seen a lot of stuff. And then there's all this money, a truckload of money right in front of him, and he sees it just driving away, and he goes, "Whoa, no.
Yeah.
I want some." And
But is he coming? And this is where I think the big question is: what motive does he have for that money? Is it the I want some, or is it the part of the gift of hospitality is accepting the offerings of others?
Or is that just trying to find an excuse?
And this is where I think we need to perhaps spend another 5 or 10 minutes just fleshing this part out, because you could read it surface level. Oh no, he was just accepting the gift on behalf of, Elisha because Naaman offered it, and it's a good thing to do is to accept that because of the blessing Naaman got. But
yeah, and it's a big but.
Yeah.
It's interesting that we have his thoughts recorded, which comes as no surprise given what we read later in the story. But my master was too easy on Naaman, this Aramaean. See, he sounds a little bit xenophobic, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Man, these Aramaeans have been hassling us for ages, and we're just letting this guy who's commanding all their armies away scot-free. We got to get something for this. We need some little pound of flesh. And so he runs after him and makes up this story. Yeah. On one level, I can resonate with Gehazi. If I had a guy who came with 5 suitcases with $6.5 million in it, and said, "Can you pray for me and heal me?"
Yeah.
God heals him, and someone says, "We're not taking the money." Man, what could you do with all that money? Think of all the people you could help. Think of all the churches you could support. Think of all the pastors you could employ, the Bible workers, the youth workers. Man, but really, what's that saying?
Yeah. It's
Where's your trust?
again, is that a level of justification?
Absolutely.
So
If as this, we read, if God owns the cattle on 1,000 hills,
yeah,
money is no object.
yeah,
Trying to take things into our own hands to fund what God wants done, or what we think God should be doing, is essentially saying, God, sorry, I'm gonna take control from this point on. I'm not sure you're doing it too well, and this opportunity seems too good to pass up. So just step back for a second while I jump in the driver's seat.
yeah,
Yeah, well, I wonder if Gehazi almost just tricked himself and almost thought maybe this is the way that God is trying to give us money through Naaman. Like maybe it was he himself who just been, his mind had been going around in circles, thinking, what if God's trying to give us this money and Naaman's the carrier of it? I know I've got an uncle who lives down the country. He's a bit he's not religious, but likes to sort of play games and make jokes here and there with my family. And once we went to the news agent, I was probably in late primary school, maybe grade 4 or grade 5, and he goes up to buy a Tatsolo ticket, and then Dad's like, "Oh, what are you doing? Why are you buying a Tatsolo ticket?" And he's like, "Oh, look, if you believe in God, God's got to be able to give me money somehow."
yeah. I think that there is the possibility that could have been Gehazi's kind of motivation, except for verse 22, where he says to Naaman, "My master sent me to say."
Sure.
He could have gone in with that mindset, but we can almost guarantee that he hasn't, because he's then said, "Elisha has sent me to say that we now want your things."
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. And the outcome of this, which Victor,
Well played.
which astutely points out, is, at the end of this story, it ends up with Gehazi, getting the same thing that Naaman was actually cured of. He's the one who gets to proceed.
But he didn't get the same thing that Naaman had. By the sounds of it, he had it far worse.
Yeah, a later stage.
Like, to skip right ahead just to that verse, Gehazi went from Elisha's presence, and his skin was leprous. It had become as white as snow, which is even more telling, because oftentimes we think of the Bible having occurred in like North America, because every picture that we see is of fair-skinned, blue-eyed people, whereas this is the Middle East, where people are darker skinned. So the description of becoming white as snow is actually quite descriptive.
And it's a sudden, rapid change. It's almost he moved to like stage 3 or 4, whereas Naaman is possibly a stage 1.
Yeah. And I think the risk is that, much like, Gehazi going after Naaman, and Fraser, you said this, you kind of went, "Oh, stuff, things, this, let me. How easy is it for us, even as committed Christians, to slip into that mindset?"
Absolutely. Thinking that, hey, we can accumulate, we can amass, we can gather, and there's nothing wrong with that on its own.
Yeah.
When that becomes your purpose, your mission, and where you get your meaning from, it's going to drag you away from what can actually save you.
Yeah.
That's a relationship with Jesus.
So, go ahead.
I was going to say, how do we bring this? How do we land this plane?
So that was going to be my question.
Ah, good question.
It was Daniel's question.
What do we? Let's take each character. What do we learn from? Let's start with the little maid. Kind of what's the nugget that she teaches us for the week ahead?
See, looking at the maid, I would say the maid is often the overlooked character in the story. And that is your faithfulness in any situation can lead to great transformation. She doesn't need to preach on street corners or to stadiums. She just is an influence in the circumstance God has placed her in. And so she's made an offhanded comment, potentially, seeing the distress on Naaman's face, that has led to a transformation of how his life will progress from that point on.
Yeah.
So that would be the lesson that I glean from the maid. I wonder, Fraser, there's other characters in this story as well. You've got Naaman, you've got Gehazi, you've got Elijah, really as the main characters aside from the maid. So have you got lessons for others as well?
Yeah. Let's go to Naaman. And let me just give you a really brief summary of his story. He's going along fine in life. He discovers he's got an illness. He's aware he can't do anything about it. He's told there's a cure. He takes some steps to find that cure. He's healed. And he responds by changing his life.
Yeah.
It's a pretty cool picture, isn't it?
Ladies and gentlemen, the gospel.
Absolutely. This is a pure, beautiful picture of the gospel in the Old Testament. We discover, hey, I'm messed up. There's stuff in my life that I don't like, that I can't deal with, that I can't get rid of, that I can follow. Yeah. We understand that. We go, man, what do I need to do about this? We hear that there's this guy called Jesus who can forgive, who can wipe all that away, who can give you a fresh start. So we choose to accept that. We follow his example in going under the water. We follow him in baptism, and we give our lives to him and start, worshiping him, walking with him every day. It's such a cool picture of the gospel in a story where you wouldn't expect to find it.
That's it.
And then you've got Gehazi, and mate, I guess for me, the lesson out of his part of the story is we just always got to be careful. Don't let the stuff that can distract and take attention, don't let that stuff take control. Don't get sidetracked by it. God is bigger. God can provide whatever you need. Trust on him and what he can do rather than what you think he needs.
Yeah. Great thoughts.
It's a cool quote, cool thought from Victor as well there.
You mean Vincent, of course.
Vincent, yeah.
Can we before we comment on that, that's been on the screen. I'm assuming people have had time to read it. Do you want to, those who are watching who don't understand why he is Vincent, do you want to tell people why he is Vincent and not Victor?
Sure. Look, I had the privilege of coming to Mazdak a few months ago, and for a while, Victor thought my name was Francis.
Yeah.
And he
and
made
you were gracious and allowed him to call you Francis.
Look, I wasn't fussed, and he made the mistake of telling me that sometimes people at his work call him Vincent.
When we finally gather together as a church community again, I would love for everyone to welcome not Uncle Vic, as you all know him, but Uncle Vincent. Sorry, Vic. We're having a bit of fun at your expense. Sorry.
Sorry, you sound younger. No, Victor, you'll wipe off about 10 years if you go by a new name.
Yeah.
Yeah, well played. Well played, Victor. Well played.
Do you have a lesson for us from Elisha?
From Elisha, the thing that stands out for me is his faithfulness to God.
Yeah.
When other people were stressed out, he wasn't. When other people didn't know what to do or misread the situation, he didn't. He just went straight to God. He trusted what God could do, but also he wasn't caught up in the lure of money, wealth, fame, meeting someone famous and powerful. He was happy with his relationship with God. He was happy as long as, and I'm misusing the term happy, but he realized that his purpose was just to be faithful to God and to represent him and to do what God called him to do, which is what he did.
Yeah.
And yeah, for me, that's a real cool reminder. As you go about your week, God's calling you just to be faithful. Don't get caught up in the other stuff. Meeting a famous commander, meeting a famous anybody, any of that stuff. Just be faithful to what God's called you to do, and trust that is what matters most.
Yeah. Awesome. Great. We might leave that discussion there. Again, if you're watching along, feel free to pop in your thoughts. What we're going to do is we're going to try this music once more. We think we've figured it out. So let's spend the next 10 or so minutes just sharing some music together. And hopefully this will work for all of us combined. So we'll start right from the start again.
You stood before creation, eternity in your hands. You spoke the earth into motion, my soul knelt to stand. You stood before my failures, carried the cross for my shame. Sin weighed upon your shoulders, my soul knelt to stand. So what can I say? What can I do? I offer this all. So I walk upon salvation, the Spirit alive in me. It's love to declare your promise, my soul yearns to stand. So what can I say? What can I do? That I offer this heart on Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. The Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. Amen. 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 Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. Amen. 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 His favor be upon you for 1,000 generations. Your family, your children, the children, the children. His favor be upon you for 1,000 generations. Your family, your children, the children, the children. His favor be upon you for 1,000 generations. Your family, your children, the children, the children. His favor be upon you and 1,000 generations. Your family, your children, the children, the children. His presence go before you and behind you and beside you, all around you, within you. He is with you. He is with you in the morning, in the evening, in the coming, in the going. Rejoicing is for you. It's for you.
Awesome.
Thanks for joining us, guys. That's our first attempt at multi-streaming. I think we did okay, but great to end worship on such a good kind of note with the music that just reminds us that God does have us in His hand, regardless of our circumstances, regardless of the challenges that life throws at us, regardless of whether we are stuck in situations like Naaman or the servant girl. We can still trust that God is there to bless us.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Hey guys, I just want to give you say a big thanks to Mazdak. Thanks for having me on. Privileged to share with you guys. Also, thanks to those who are contributing. I think Victor's been doing a bit of an ask around to collect some food and things for the care packages that we're putting together for ADRA. So thank you for those of you who are contributing. If you want to know more, ask Victor. You can ask Vincent as well. I think they both know what's going on. But yeah, we're just basically putting food packages together to give out to people in our area, in our community who just are doing it tough right now. So thank you for all those who are contributing to that.
That being said, next week we'll be back again at 2:30 with Phil Highland sharing with us. So join us again on YouTube or Facebook from 2:30. But to end our time together, Fraser, would you mind praying for us?
Yeah, I'd love to. Let's bow our heads. Father, we want to thank you for this story that reminds us that you are a God who does impossible things. You heal you restore, you renew, and you work in ways which sometimes we think are either too simple or strange or different to what we would expect. But God, when you call someone to do something, there's always a reason for it. So, Father, my prayer is that anyone who is listening to this who feels a little bit like Naaman and feels like there's stuff going on in their lives which they can't deal with, which they can't get rid of, which they can't cure themselves, Father, that they will consider coming to you as the healer, as the restorer, the one who makes all things new. And Lord, for those who are listening who maybe have made that decision but are wondering how they can contribute to your kingdom or how they can stay on that path that Elisha did of not being lured by the stuff and money and an opportunity or power, Lord, my prayer is that for those that they will take a leaf out of Little Maid's book and just be willing to point people towards you, that they'll be willing to stay faithful in what you've called them to do. And Lord, I just, pray a special blessing on each person that is listening to this, that you'll be close to them, that you will show them who you are and how good you are. Pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, guys. We'll hopefully see you all next week.
Yeah. Have a good week.
See you, everyone.